Hi everyone, hello, and welcome to a new session. And here with me is Ananya.
Hello everyone.
So today we are back with a new session. And so Ananya, what are we doing today?
We're going to do AP set and this is day 6 that we'll be doing it. So let's start our practice today.
Yes, I will just start sharing my screen and then we can get started. Okay. So I believe all of you can see my screen clearly. Sorry, I think my screen just jumped a bit. Okay. So here we are with our AP set crash course, day 6. Prior to this, there are 5 more videos on AP set. If you haven't watched those videos yet, please do. They will really help you with your revision. So let's move on to our first question. Okay.
Who among the following is not a graveyard poet? Is it Thomas Parnell, John Gay, Edward Young, or Robert Blair? You have to tell who's not a graveyard poet among the following.
So it is John Gay, who is not a graveyard poet. He was a major poet of the 18th century, but he was not associated with the graveyard school of poetry. Other than that, Thomas Purnell, Edward Young, Robert Blair, they did write graveyard poetry and they were associated with this transitional school of poetry, which wrote poems about graveyards, death, and mortality. Okay. Uh, all right. Let's move on to the next question.
Which one of the following was not involved in the production of the influential postmodern text called Learning from Las Vegas? Is it Harold Bloom, Robert Venturi, Stephen Isenor, or Dennis Scott Brown? Who of the following was not involved in the production of Learning from Las Vegas?
Okay, so Learning from Las Vegas is a 1972 book by Robert Venturi, Dennis Scott Brown, and Stephen Isenor. Translated into 18 languages, the book helped foster the development of postmodern architecture. So, Harold Bloom is not associated with this book. It was Robert Venturi, Stephen Isenor, and Dennis Scott Brown who worked on this book, Learning from Las Vegas. Next.
Eliot explored disassociation of sensibility in his essay on Dash. Is it Hamlet's predicament, Keatsian poetry, Milton's poetry, or the metaphysical poets? You have to tell Eliot explored in which essay this term dissociation of sensibility.
So, unification of sensibility and dissociation of sensibility. These two are very important ideas which were propounded by T.S. Eliot. So, dissociation of sensibility means where there is a separation of feeling and thought. And T.S. Eliot talked about this idea in his very famous essay, The Metaphysical Poets. Tradition and the individual talent is also a very important essay by Eliot. So he's also a very important critique of the 20th century. So please do look up his critical works and poems. They're very important. Okay, next.
Ralph is a character in Dash. Was it The Lord of the Flies, Clockwork Orange, The Enchanter's Net, or The Paper Man? You have to tell Ralph is a character in which of the following novels?
Okay. So Ralph is a character from a very famous novel that is The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. It was the debut novel of William Golding published in 1954, and this plot concerns a group of British boys who are stranded on an uninhabited island and their disastrous attempts to govern themselves. The novel's themes include morality, leadership, and the tension between civility and chaos. Ralph, Piggy, Jack, Simon, they're the characters of this novel, and they are some British boys who have got stranded in an uninhabited island. Okay, next.
Who among the following has used Indian philosophy extensively in his novels? Is it Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao, or Bhabani Bhattacharya? You have to tell which of the following has used Indian philosophy in his novels.
It is none other than Raja Rao, who used philosophy extensively in his novels. So Raja Rao was an Indian-American writer of English language novels and short stories whose works are deeply rooted in metaphysics. The Serpent and the Rope, a semi-autobiographical novel recounting a search for spiritual truth and Europe and India, established him as one of the finest Indian prose stylists and won him the Sahitya Academy Award in 1963. So all of his fictional works, actually, rather most of his fictional works, have topics which explore philosophy, spiritual truth, and morality. So Raja Rao is a very important Indian novelist. Do look up his works. Oh, next.
Historical and cultural conditions of the production of literary texts are studied by dash. Is it new criticism, deconstruction, new historicism, or psychoanalytic criticism? You have to tell historical and cultural conditions of the production of literary texts are studied by which school of thought?
It is new historicism. And new historicism, as we all know, it's a form of literary theory which aims to understand intellectual history through literature, and literature through its cultural context follows the 1950s field of history of ideas and refers to itself as a form of cultural poetics. It first developed in the 1980s primarily through the works of the critic Stephen Greenblatt and gained widespread influence in the 1990s. Okay, next.
Idea of a university is written by dash. Is it Cardinal Newman, Carlyle, Ruskin, or Arnold? Idea of a university, this is the work and it is written by either of the following writers.
So idea of a university is it's a very famous work by none other than Cardinal Newman, who was also associated with the Oxford movement during the 19th century. And what is this work about? He said that the aim of the university is a true enlargement of mind, the power of viewing many things at once. And in this work, Newman delivered, this work is actually a collection of lectures that Newman delivered. And these lectures show us how it is relevance, the relevance of a university, not only in the contemporary Victorian era, but also in terms of today. What is the relevance of a body of a university, how it enlarges one's mind, how it sharpens one's critical faculties. Okay, and Cardinal Newman was also associated with Oxford movement. Okay, next.
The poem The Sunshine Cat is written by dash. Is it Mamta Kalia, Gauri Deshpande, Meena Alexander, or Kamla Das? The poem The Sunshine Cat is written by either of the following female writers.
The Sunshine Cat is a very popular poem by Kamla Das. And like all her poems, it also has some autobiographical undertones. So please do look up not only the poems of Kamla Das, but also her autobiography like My Story. And all her poems, starting from My Introduction or The Looking Glass, they are very important, not only in terms of the language she used, but also in terms of documentation and feelings and the politics of her position. Okay, so please do look up her poems and her works of nonfiction as well. Okay, next.
The poem The Land was written by dash. Is it W.H. Auden, Cecil D. Lewis, Stephen Spender, or Vita Sackville West? You have to tell the poem The Land was written by whom?
Okay, so The Land is a book-length narrative poem by Vita Sackville West. Published in 1926 by William Heinemann, it is a Georgic celebration of the rural landscape, traditions, and history of the Kentish world where Sackville West lived. The poem was popular enough for there to be 6 print runs in the first 3 years of its publication, aided in part by its winning the Hawthornden Prize for Literature. So it's a book-length narrative poem by Vita Sackville West, which celebrates the lush green vegetations and luxuries of the rural area. So please do look up such unknown works, okay? The minor works of major writers, okay? Next. Okay. So before we move on, many of you have already enrolled in this course. At Vallabh, from 8th April onwards, we have started this course of RPSC Assistant Professor Quiz Series, where we are giving you everyday topic-wise quizzes, model tests, and you will also get live revisions twice a week, while each session will be of 2 hours. You can see the fee on the screen, and there's also a phone number which you can see on the screen. For your further inquiries, please contact here and get enrolled accordingly. And hurry, because the course is already started, and you will also get lifetime access to the recordings if you join now. Okay, next.
20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair is a collection of poems by Dash. Is it T.S. Eliot, William Wordsworth, Pablo Neruda, or A.K. Ramanujan? 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. This is a collection of poems and it is written by either of the following writers.
Okay, so 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair is a poetry collection by the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. Published in June 1924, the book launched Neruda to fame at the young age of 19 and is one of the most renowned literary works of the 20th century in the Spanish language. The book has been translated into many languages in English. The translation was made by poet W.S. Merwin in 1969. So it's a poetry collection by the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. 20 Love Poems and the Song of Despair. Okay, next.
Which one of the following is not written by Charles Lamb? Is it Old and New Schoolmaster, Of Simulation and Dissimulation, Imperfect Sympathies, or A Bachelor's Complaint Against the Behavior of Married People? You have to tell which is not written by Charles Lamb.
Here the essay of Simulation and Dissimulation, it's not by Charles Lamb, but it's by Francis Bacon. Other than that, Old and New Schoolmaster, Imperfect Sympathies, and A Bachelor's Complaint Against the Behavior of Married People, these are essays by Charles Lamb. But of Simulation and Dissimulation, it's an essay by Francis Bacon. Again, Bacon and Lamb are very important essayists and writers. So please do look up their essays. There are other works which are not very popular, but which are minor works. Do look up. They can be very useful during any exam you sit for. Okay, next.
Curriculum Vitae by Muriel Spark is dash. Is it an autobiography, a psychological novel, a science fiction, or a regional novel? Curriculum Vitae is the name of this work. It's by Muriel Spark. You have to tell what is it an autobiography, a psychological novel, science fiction, or a regional novel?
Okay, so Curriculum Vitae by Muriel Spark, it's her autobiography. It's her autobiography, and it's a vivid account of the people and places that inspired so much of Muriel Spark's work. Edinburgh of the 1920s, her Jewish father, her Presbyterian English mother, and of course, the original Miss Jean Brodie. So in her autobiography, Curriculum Vitae, she has talked about all these places and people who inspired her and her works. A short cracker of a book full of love and malice, black wit, intelligence, and sharp perceptions and judgments. This work is a groundbreaking work which is autobiographical in its vein and presents a very unique style of writing and thought. Oh, next.
Which among the following is not a work by Nadeem Gordimer? Is it The Conservationist, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, July's People, or The Pickup? To tell which is not a work by Nadeem Gordimer.
Okay, so here, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. It's a 1984 novel by Milan Kundera about two women, two men, a dog, and their lives in the 1968 Prague spring period of Czechoslovak history. Although written in 1982, the novel was not published until 2 years later in a French translation. The other novels, like The Conservationist, July's People and the Pickup, are by Nadine Gordimer, but The Unbearable Lightness of Being is by Milan Kundera. Again, Milan Kundera, Gordimer, they're very important writers. Do look up all of their works, their chronology, the main important characters, famous characters they created. Please do look up. Okay. Next.
Which of the following statements is true about the importance of being earnest? The author held an ironic mirror to the aristocracy, displaying wit and paradoxical wisdom. It is a tragicomedy. It is a dark comedy written in prose. The writer is philosophizing and presenting the spiritual ideals with a didactic approach. You have to tell which statement is true about the importance of being earnest.
Okay. So the importance of being earnest, a trivial comedy for serious people. It's a play by Oscar Wilde. And the statement which is true about this play is that here the author held an ironic mirror to the aristocracy, displaying wit and paradoxical wisdom. The other statements are not true, they're wrong. But the first statement is true about this play. Okay. Next.
Name the debut novel of Kingsley Amis. Is it Lucky Jim, That Uncertain Feeling, Take a Girl Like You, or The Anti-Death League? You have to tell the name of the debut novel of Kingsley Amis.
Okay, so it is Lucky Jim. So Lucky Jim is a novel by Kingsley Amis, first published in 1954 by Victor Gollancz. It was Kingsley Amis's first novel, and it won the 1955 Somerset Maugham Award for fiction. The novel follows the academic and romantic tribulations of the eponymous Jim Dixon or James Dixon, a reluctant history lecturer at an unnamed provincial English university. So Lucky Jim, 1954, it was the debut novel of Kingsley Amis. Okay, next.
Which of the following is not a pen name of Walter Scott? Is it Lawrence Templeton, George Orwell, Jebediah Cleisbotham, or Captain Clutterbuck? You have to tell which is not a pen name of Walter Scott.
So let me first tell you the 5 pen names which were used by Walter Scott. Okay. So he had at least 5 pen names, including Jebediah Cleisbotham, Crystal Croftangry, Malachi Malagrotha, Lawrence Templeton, and Captain Clutterbuck. These were the 5 pen names which were used by Walter Scott. And as we know, George Orwell was the pen name of Eric Arthur Blair. So George Orwell was not the pen name of Walter Scott. George Orwell was the pen name of Eric Arthur Blair. Okay. Next.
Pat Barker is the author of Dash. Is it Sacred Hunger, Bird Song, the Regeneration Trilogy, or The English Patient? You have to tell Pat Barker is the author of which of the following works?
So as we all know, it is the Regeneration Trilogy. The Regeneration Trilogy is a series of 3 novels by Pat Barker on the subject of the First World War. In 2012, The Observer named it as one of the 10 best historical novels. And which are the 3 novels which we can find in this trilogy? It is Regeneration, The Eye in the Door, and The Ghost Road. These 3 novels constitute the Regeneration Trilogy of Pat Barker. Regeneration, The Eye in the Door, and The Ghost Road. Okay, next.
Identify the novel not written by Michael Ondaatje. Is it the English Patient, A Bird in the House, In the Skin of a Lion, or Anil's Ghost? To tell which novel is not written by Michael Ondaatje.
Yes, it is A Bird in the House. A Bird in the House, first published in 1970, is a short story sequence written by Margaret Lawrence. Noted by Lawrence to be semi-autobiographical, the series chronicles the growing up of a young agnostic writer, Vanessa MacLeod, in the fictional town of Manawaka, Manitoba. So please remember, A Bird in the House. It is one of the Manawaka novels of Margaret Lawrence. A Bird in the House was written from the perspective of Vanessa at age 40, while she recalls her childhood. It is therefore impossible to tell if young Vanessa was truly able to understand the events unfolding around her, or if she gained that understanding later in life. It was originally published as a series of independent short stories. Okay. Next. Okay. So before we wrap up, we just want to remind you guys that at Wilde from 8th April onwards, we have started this course of RPSC Assistant Professor Quiz Series, where you will get topic-wise quizzes every day, model tests for practice, and also live revisions twice a week. Each session will be of 2 hours. And if you join now, you will get all the quizzes that have happened as of yet, and all the recordings of the live sessions. You will have lifetime access to these recordings. The fee is 2,500, and there is also the phone number on the screen where you can contact for your further queries and join accordingly. So, okay, so that's all for today. So, Ananya, shall we wrap up for tonight?
Yes, I hope it was a really good revision. We touched upon a lot of areas that you can revise further. So, good night, everyone.
Okay. So if you guys like the video, then please hit the like button and share it with your friends, and subscribe our channel if you're new here. And we will see you guys again tomorrow at 9. So see you all again tomorrow, and please do join us again. And thank you for staying with